Anyone that was probably remember the story. They got, there was a lot of unethical things done by Alameda that almost destroyed their business. And since then, they started. It really killed them back then. They launched an investigation that was early. I think it was early this year or end of last year that it happened, when nobody really even looked at FTX. And they launched an investigation. They got a lot of chain analysis guys there, and a pretty big team. And I'm just checking the group to see if they're coming up. So that
okay. So just Nick, Nick's being added as a listener. Nick, just press the button and just wait 2 seconds, and then you'll see. If you just wait 2 seconds, there will be a button that says speaker. Just give it 2 seconds. It's glitchy. It takes a while to load.
I'm just messaging them now.
Trying to get these two people, Nick and Hussein.
Yeah, so they since then they launched the investigation, and they found things. A lot of them will be pretty crazy allegations for the audience listening, and they'll be pretty clear. They'll tell you the allegations that they can prove, and they've got evidence to prove 100%. And then they'll share the allegations that is more speculative, and they cannot prove, but they're looking into it. So some of it will sound crazy, and I think they'll be open if you DM them. All reporters, you can DM them and ask for the evidence to back up some claims. I know you have to be able to write about it, and they'll be able to share a lot of it. And obviously the speculative ones, you take it as is, as pure speculation, but based on a lot of research. How'd you go, Ryan?
I've sent it, but both of them should have the invite. Both of them should have the invite. They should be ready to join. I did actually ask him that question. He said that it could have been Alameda.
Who did you ask what question?
I did ask Sam if they could have been creating fake tokens, and he said that could have been Alameda.
So the synthetic tokens. Go ahead, Ty.
The whole inflating token supply. This is something that has come out in the past, where let's say that someone deposits, I don't know, let's say 1 million Dogecoin, and that's all that's on an exchange. An exchange, because they're centralized, they can just say that they have 2 million, and this is highly likely what probably happened when in this particular case what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'll be joining the space from my other phone. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
That's a risk, but I have no choice.
Yeah, I was trying to lead up to Naked Shore, but I didn't get there. It's just
James.
Are they up, or should I have joined from my other phone?
I have invited them both. It says it's not bringing them on speaker.
Okay, let me chat. I'll send you the username as well, chat, so you can try to invite them. In the meantime, I'll go in from my other phone, to try to bring them up. So let me send the
hey, while you're bringing up some people, one of the things that's going to come up was this whole separation between FTX US and FTX International. This is going to create an absolute shit show between creditors. This happened in the Celsius case, where the lawyers used the division between some people, like regulators were sending cease and desist orders to Celsius, and then they bodged together a fake custody service where they never segregated funds. And it created this big divide where there was a bit of funds in custody, what was called custody, and the rest in earn. And then the lawyers used that in order to determine, or they're using it now, that all the funds belong to Celsius, and therefore they could spend them and use them as much as they want. And this is the shit show that's going to happen between the US and international. All the US are going to create an ad hoc group and try and get 100% recovery based upon what Sam's saying. The lawyers are going to use that in order to create division between the international creditors and the US creditors and the Japan creditors. And they're going to use every ounce of that to wage war against creditor in order to win prisoner's dilemma and get things exactly what they want. It's a very manipulative technique.
Simon, I want to ask you another question. Do you remember how we did a space once? We had a few people from Celsius, and there was a lot of Celsius were some of the first whistleblowers on Alameda's actions, and there were allegations about Alameda. I'll let you tell us what was that space about, and what was the connection between Alameda and Celsius. And we do have speakers that will come up and talk about it a bit later. If you can summarize it for the audience, because it was a really eye-opening space.
It was just more the Celsius community were the first to really call out Sam Bankman-Fried because they detected naked short selling, because they knew that all the sell tokens were locked up on the app, and so there was only so much circulating supply. And then they they tried to create the short squeeze. The bit they got wrong is that it didn't need to be covered by sell tokens, so everyone got wrecked. But what was important is that they, really highlighted to everybody that SBF is a really bad actor, and so we started really asking questions, and I got a reply to him. But it was because of that community that I was one step ahead of this, and their work that was done that. So they really were shouting as loud as possible while everyone was saying FTX is the hero and was bidding on this, and everyone was trying to get to bid on the companies, save them and stuff. So they detected it, and it was because so many of the sell tokens were locked up on the app. It was a bit easier to detect, strange behavior.
I've got good news. I logged in from my other phone, so I'll be inviting them myself. So guys, check from my DM.
So guys, sorry, I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
Oh shit, you're on. Yeah.
Fuck
excellent. Fuck yeah. All right, perfect, man. I can hear you, bro.
On that last
and
one,
I'll try to invite Nick. Go ahead, Hussein. So just Hussein, I want to do an introduction, bro. What did you go through? What kicked off that investigation? And let's kick it off with some of the things you've been telling me over the last few days and weeks.
So obviously, I don't know if you've heard us before, but we went through a situation where Alameda actually basically created counterfeit synthetic coins and traded it to dump our price. They basically dumped our market. John himself from Alameda was meant to be helping us, obviously, as a partner. We went into agreement with them. Alameda sold themselves as obviously the partner to New Genesis to try to help New Genesis grow. On the launch date, they did everything they could to actually dump the coin. We found the coin being sold for 1 to 2 cents. There was literally about 76,000 coins sold initially. We basically told Alameda we don't want them to do market making anymore and to retract. They agreed. All of a sudden, coins were still on the market, being sold at 1 to 2 cents. We utilized something called NAVIS, which is New Genesis Artificial Validations Intelligence System. It's very different our systems were developed for meta processing, so it's a little bit different than your traditional technology. So what happens is the AI actually witnessed very certain things that they did and reported it to us. One of them is creating their own synthetic versions of our coin. The second was trading. There was trade on the network when there was no coins that should have been on the network. Basically very similar to what they were saying about Cell. I'll go into more detail as we go along, but I think if we stick to the factors, right now, I mean, you guys actually got Sam to admit a few things that nobody realized how important it is. I know it didn't go as, the way most people wanted, and Sam is pretty bright and understood how to play this, but he actually did admit that they did have counterfeit coins on their system, I mean, based on the technology anyway, and they were actually selling counterfeit coins. So you actually did bring out some certain things. I mean, once Nick is on board, and what I was trying to say just earlier is Cell wasn't the first. There was a lawsuit in 2017 and a lawsuit in 2019. So there was actually, this is not a problem that actually came out today. This is a problem that actually came out in 2017, and it was actually brought to everyone's attention that that's what they were doing. And then again in 2019, then again with us in 2022.
So yeah, I think what we should do is maybe just I just want to recap what you're saying, because I think a lot of people, you spoke really quickly and I think a lot of people don't really understand what happened. But you launched the project, and part of the project that you launched, you used Alameda for some kind of market making services, right?
Yeah. So when we go onto an exchange, the exchange tell you, so Liquid says we can't get listed unless we have a market maker. So Liquid is another asset that's owned by Sam. So they actually introduced us to Alameda Research. Now, Alameda Research became our partner, which is the market maker, which in terms of the agreement we had with them were to sustain a value of the coin until the market picks up. So they're meant to be supporting the project until they're not meant to dump liquidity, they're meant to hold liquidity, and then there's enough buyers, release liquidity so the market is stable. So that was their position.
And what they did was they dumped all your tokens. You realize that they were dumping all your tokens.
They were 200 million. They were 200 million new coin on Liquid.
And then you said to them, okay, guys, stop. We don't want you to be the market makers anymore. Stop immediately, and please give us back the tokens. And they gave you back the tokens.
It was a little bit harder than that. We told them, please, you're destroying us. You're ruining our company. You're ruining our reputation. Please, we begged them to stop. So if you look at the video that's out there, it wasn't actually saying it. You read the messages. We were begging Alameda to stop. We should just stop it. We don't care. We don't care what happened. We don't care if it's a tech issue. Just please stop it. Right now, you're destroying us. And they just continued, and they just continued, and they just continued.
And I think more importantly here, when they gave you back, once you eventually managed or asked for the tokens back, they were in a position where they couldn't provide the tokens, and I think that gave you that's the point where you realize that what they were doing is they were actually creating fake synthetic tokens, and they were trading these fake synthetic tokens as if they were the real tokens, and effectively they were just creating fake tokens and trading fake tokens on the exchange, right?
Correct. It was a little bit more complicated than that because what happened is our AI witnessed them shifting over assets, which is the real tokens that were sitting down in real wallets, and shifting them out of the sub wallets that were created for customers and put them all into one wallet, which was their wallet. So they took custodianship, or obviously that's that of every single person's new coin, and put it into one single wallet. Now we're not used to centralized exchanges at that point. So that our AI alerted us that a function was utilized that they had no permission to utilize. So that's where we first went to him and said, what do you guys have done? I mean, why are you guys pulling customers' assets? Why are you guys using the private keys of customers, even though you guys are the custodian? Why are you removing the subcategory, the sub wallets? And why are you creating one singular wallet to hold all assets of customers? Therefore, there is no longer a relationship between a single coin that a customer has and the representation in the wallet that the customer has. So they destroyed the representation in that wallet. That's the first time we realized that these guys are able to, or operating in a way to actually remove the liquidity from the liquidity pools, centralize those liquidity into a wallet that they only had access to. And therefore, we could not determine what customers had what new coin and how much new coin really was on the centralized exchange.
Now, just to be clear, they didn't create a perk for your coin, right? They didn't create a perpetual for your coin.
No. That's other projects we work out. That's us. Yeah.
Okay, good. So they were so effectively they were effectively trading in. They could create as many tokens as they wanted, and they could trade as many tokens as they wanted because no one was holding them into account.
Correct. The only way that anyone would have ever found out is when people start withdrawing. So when we asked our customers to start withdrawing assets from exchanges, and when we started withdrawing, so I was one of the first to initiate the withdrawal process out of Liquid. And because you got to understand there's two different parts of this technology. There's the decentralized nature of the blockchain, also the blockchain itself, and then there's the centralized nature. The blockchain will never accept counterfeit coins or synthetic coins. So when you try to withdraw funds, if you cannot withdraw funds out of a system, there's a couple of reasons why. One of the main reasons, or actually it is the main reason, it's not one of the main reasons, is the liquidity is not back to that wallet. So the centralized unit has a representation. It doesn't actually have your crypto, right? So you're creating a representation on a wallet. You aren't actually trading Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything on that centralized unit. So I can add any kind of data points to your wallet. I can give you 1 million Bitcoin. It doesn't really matter. The only time that anyone would ever be able to tell that that Bitcoin was fake or synthetic is when that's withdrawn back to the native chain. So the only time you'll ever be able to realize it.
We saw exactly the same thing that happened with Bitcoin. So when people were withdrawing their Bitcoin off Alameda, which was reflected in their accounts as a positive Bitcoin balance, what we then saw was that we saw on chain, we saw that Alameda actually had, or FTX had no more Bitcoin. And
correct.
There were
exactly correct.
Exactly. So so I think what we did is we got Sam to admit on this call that they were doing that, because I asked him a very direct question. 100%. I said, could it?
Yeah, and that's the key thing. Because
100%.
Margin or spot, if you're lending your Bitcoin or you got your Bitcoin there, it's still the same thing.
Well, no. In this conversation, there's two key things you guys got out of him. That forget about the rest of the questions, right? Because they're really irrelevant to a crime. They're just governance of how they operate the systems, right? Governance you can play with. You can argue anything for or against a governance system. What you can't argue is simple facts of how they actually the technology work and how much knowledge the person had that technology. Now, even though he was playing stupid, he actually showed and demonstrated he actually understood every part of the technology, including from leveraging to how the system operates. So you actually, even though he thought he was outsmarting everyone on this channel, if you sit back now and take bits and pieces of what he said, you'll understand he actually admitted to creating the fraud. And he actually admitted even in the terms of agreements, which I believe he was incorrect anyway. See, under the terms of agreements, they have something called a custodianship, right? Now, they don't call it custodianship. They call it title to your digital assets shall at all times remain with you and shall not transfer to FTX trading. Now, this is a very crucial thing, because this is saying that I'm holding your crypto, not I'm holding FTT. I'm holding your current crypto in custodianship. It is your crypto. It is not ours. We're not going to use it. We're not going to move it. We're not going to give anybody else access to it. So under their own terms of agreements, they've made it very clear. Now, what he's trying to spin the story is utilizing another part of his terms and agreements, which then talks about when a third party can initiate or utilize that service. And that's what I assume he's trying to use, which loophole he's trying to use. Now, the only thing is the third party agreement then requires someone the person who owns the wallet or the crypto to approve it. Now, there's never been a situation that I'm aware of that someone told him that, you know what, yeah, go ahead, use my crypto, trade it, take it, bank it, cash it out, utilize it.
You know, what I think he's saying there is that when you engage in the margin order book, you can have your Bitcoin in custody, but when you engage in that, you're agreeing to lend it, and you're engaging in that transaction. But that doesn't change the backing. That doesn't change the backing equation.
Correct. So one Bitcoin will always be one Bitcoin in the system, and one Ethereum should always, since it's a custodianship relationship, it's not that you give me Ethereum and I'm going to swap it to FTT. Right?
Worth $10,000 or $15,000 today, or $17,000 today, and they allow me to borrow against that Bitcoin 50% of the Bitcoin's value. So I'm allowed to borrow on margin $8,500. The problem is that if Bitcoin goes down below $8,500 in one tick, so if Bitcoin goes from 17,000 to 2,000, the risk management systems don't have an exit point. That's the problem. I think that the one point where I actually realized that there may be something here to what he's saying is that if their risk management systems on the leverage weren't good enough, they would have taken some kind of loss, a big loss, because the risk management systems are tolerant to a certain market move. But if the market moves much quicker than that, then the problem is that they can't adjust the leverage with the borrowed position.
Yeah,
So
you miss the margin call and it goes undepassed and that creates a loss.
Exactly. So that point, I actually believe, to be honest, that maybe they have risk management
in FTT during those conditions,
and maybe some others, things like Serum, things like Solana. You know, people were holding Solana. All of a sudden, Solana went from 36 to 12. I don't know again, I don't know what their risk management systems look like, but that one of the portion was actually one point where I realized, you know, at some point they would have taken a lot of losses as a result of that. So the things that were
but what they've done is they've taken the losses from assets they should have never used to collateralize all those. So go back. That's why I say go back to its core. Forget about governance. Now we're talking about how they're operating their systems. Go back to the original crime itself. The crime itself is stolen assets. It's assets held in custodianship, and those assets being removed out of custodianship, sold and manipulated and utilized as they wished without the customer's knowledge. So, and this is why I say, if we go into governance, we can sit here all day, argue for and against. And Sam will beat all of us in terms of governance because he can structure any governance utilizing the best lawyers in the world. Right? There's two different things. The more we open up an argument about governance, the more we open up a chance for Sam to get away with this. So if we stick to bare facts and say, okay, what's the original crime that he held, then we hold him accountable for the crimes he committed. You know, other than giving him loopholes and justifying what he did.
That was I want to go. Was trying to get into the because one of the arguments was the Almeida was the customer, but then they said the reason that only happened was because FTX didn't have a bank account. So then that gets into that whole thing. Well, if it's just a bank account, that's just a fiat part. So where does the crypto come in? And then he was going off on stable coins and stuff. Well, they were issuing stable coins and they were issuer. So I think we missed like a whole bigger exercise around that because
we missed. I've got like 60 exercises we missed that obviously we didn't have the time for. Simon, I just want to quickly ask Hussein. Sorry to interrupt, Simon. One of the things I wanted to dig into near the end of the interview was others that were involved. Gary Wang, Sam Trabucco. So Gary Wang was the co-founder and CTO, childhood friend of SBF. Sam Trabucco, co-CEO at Alameda, and he left early. I think a couple of weeks after you guys started your investigation or something, which is odd. Then you've got Caroline Ellison, which is CEO of Alameda, and then Dan Friedberg, the shady guy. General counsel and chief regulatory.
That's why I tried to ask him.
And he's also the family attorney, SBF's family.
Yeah. It's funny how it's funny how he tried to back away as soon as everyone was okay, but as soon as you got to Dan, it was like a no-go zone.
Can you tell us more? Can you elaborate for the audience about these 5 figures and what you think their involvement is? What you know for a fact and what you speculate.
Look, the issue is, especially when we come down to Wang and the group, right? We can speculate only based on the technology and how the technology operates. So the one thing that we always say is technology can never lie, right? People will lie, technology can't. So someone created this technology to operate in a certain manner. Now, we understand how this technology completely operates. So from an operational perspective, of course, Wayne was involved and Singh was involved. I mean, just look at the money that they took and look at the money that Lowe's loaned out to Singh. Who loans out someone $548 million to a developer they've got? But again, a lot of it is not hard proven. So a lot of it is whistleblowers from internal, obviously from Alameda, from FTX, from other companies who actually came out and spoke to us. In the last 6 months, we've had majority of the whistleblowers completely talk to us, and the majority of the projects come to us, and the investigation has been pretty extensive. Now, a lot of the evidence, and I know I've sent you some of the evidence, is pretty large. There's a lot of evidence to go around. Everything suggests that this was a well-orchestrated plan. So the technology itself was actually working in a way for them to be able to create, obviously, transactions within their exchange. But there's 2 different parts to it. There's the internal transactions and there's the withdrawal and deposits. So the withdrawal and deposits is what everyone keeps looking at, which is what happens on chain and that you can actually find out and analyze. What you can't find out is what actually happens internally inside the centralized unit. So this is where these guys came into it. So they created a system which can operate to allow what happened to happen. So last month, I was on this channel, a few weeks ago, I was on this channel, and one of the FTX insiders came out and said it's impossible for them to be able to have synthetics or not paired one-to-one relationship. And when we argued, he came up with a term which said they've got a trade engine or a payment engine, which they're utilizing.
Zero Sum is on stage right now, I think, unless it's glitching for me. Zero Sum, you still there?
I have to thank him. He's the one that made me aware of exactly what they're doing.
Zero Sum was what he's still there. Zero Sum is a legend. He's one of the best insiders we've had, who gave us hours of his time and honesty. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, it's because of him I actually was able to determine what they were actually trying to do. And again, this is speculation and not actually proven fact.
I'll let him comment since you mentioned him. Zero Sum, go ahead, bro.
I'll go ahead.
No, I mean, I think people are kind of on the right, but when it boils down to it, right, just remember that you can't blow up an exchange, right? That at the end of the day, it's a tech platform, right? It's an execution system. It's meant to execute. The only way you can blow up is leverage and misuse of funds, right? FTX would never and should never obviously operate and trade within its own system. And that's where the big issue comes in, right? He has Alameda, and Alameda is now trading within that centralized exchange. And that's where, you can do anything from that point, right? Then you can do things. So what we've seen is the contagion that spread through the market, right? It didn't touch places like Kraken or OKX because these companies operate as purely just as an execution platform. They don't have a trading system attached to it. Alameda was that trading system that they were using within FTX. And that's the reason why it's blowing up. I mean, it's as simple as that. But I'll just let Hussein keep going because I don't know what he was about to say. I let him on to, but just continue. But you are right there, Hussein, right? It should just be a tech platform that executes trades. It should never have operated within a trading capacity or taken like a system.
Even under the terms and agreements, I agree with both. So, when we're saying they're not aware of anything like this ever happening before and Sam having no knowledge, you need to go into, I think it was 2017, November the 20th, if I remember right. There was a case which was brought up against FTX and Alameda, right? And it was there was actually one in 2017 and one in 2019. So they were already aware of that Alameda. There was already allegations of exactly what we're discussing right now that's happened in 2017 and 2019. So the idea that Sam had no idea it was possible or never investigated something like this or never touched it, I mean, it's just go online and just look up I'll get you the right details. I don't have them in front of me. But it was something filed in San Francisco. I think it was the 4th of November. It was a court filing. Bitcoin manipulation, Bitcoin manipulation abatement. I've just tried to pull it up. And it was a class action that actually went against FTX and Alameda. So there was one for FTX, and then 2019, again, FTX and Alameda. So the claims, and again, Celsius and other one, there's many claims in the past directly that went to Sam that he had perfect knowledge that the accusations of this happening was actually happening. It's not something just to happen.
And then guys, from the space you heard now, I know there's you alone, Hussein, sent me like 60 something questions, and I think Nick, your partner, who were trying to bring up
60 questions,
another 25 questions. From the questions we asked and the answers, you did say that there's a few things he did admit. He said he admitted fraud. Can you touch on those points again, like the highlights from the discussion that we had, and the points that you think the audience, or at least the press, or anyone that does journalists or citizen journalists, whatever you want to call them, and that they should press on, in your opinion?
Okay, I can't remember who asked the question. He pushed Sam to actually say that yes, that they had actually coins on the platform that weren't actually there, so they went back to one-to-one. I mean, the best thing to do, let me pull out the actual script and let me break it down for you guys and comment on each section and explain to you from both the governance, the technology, and the terms and condition how that's completely incorrect. It's easier for me to take it through instead of making a mistake and saying something wrong. What I don't want to do is take justice away from the situation. So, it's better that I actually break it and then actually comment on it as I go through than just to make a comment right now.
I mean, I did get him to admit that they were creating coins out of nothing. Or that he said that was possible. I did get him to admit that there was money that was on Alameda, where they were creating the money stayed in Alameda, but they were creating fake coins on FTX. That was the second time that he admitted. I think I got him to admit to 2 or 3 other things which were pretty, I think, criminal in nature. That was the one thing. I was trying to get him to tell me who was around him, and then I was trying to get to see how much he was speaking to Caroline, how much he was speaking to Dan Friedberg and all those guys. But I think the problem is that there were just too many questions flying at him at the time. So I don't think we managed to get to the core of that.
I was really, again, I was really keen to find out more about the other players. And Hussein, you mentioned to me in our call that, I'm going to say these two things, I think they're confidential. You said two things. You said there's definitely other players that play a role, some that we mentioned, some within FTX and Alameda, some outside FTX and Alameda. I'm not sure if you want to mention names now. And the second thing you mentioned is that it's also possible that some people were literally pulling the strings, and some people made this assumption as well. Obviously, we don't know for sure. Do you want to elaborate on those 2 points you said to me earlier?
Okay. Once you understand what was happening, it's much larger in scale than most people realize. Therefore, it cannot be done by a single person, as in Sam. So when we investigate this, I mean, we've been investigating this for a very long time. And I know I've shared a lot of stuff with you, and most of the stuff is pretty solid. And most of the stuff we've actually proven beyond the reasonable doubt, including the transfers given to the, obviously, donations to politicians. But what it is, I mean, we believe, Dan, and again, from our own experience, let's talk about it in a way where they can't say it's incorrect. Let's talk about what happened to us and who bribed us, who gave us money, who offered us, and who was negotiating. So on the first instance, the first person that took over was Caroline, and Caroline straight away came up and basically gave us a bribe to shut up. Right, so she offered us all of a sudden instantly when we went to them, and this is after we started accusing the accusation of counterfeit synthetics. Right, so straight away the first offer they gave us was $600,000, right, US. Now, to their knowledge, we're nobodies. We have no money. We're a small group. They don't know anything more about us. I don't think they really cared at that time. I think the way they operate, they don't actually do anything, to DD. So for them to come instantly and offer $600,000 in the way they offered was the first indication. Now, obviously, we turned that $600,000 down after we realized what they're actually doing. It was, first of all, we were after compensation for what they caused. Then as soon as we enacted our AIs and we started looking into exactly what they're operating and what we realized, we then turned around and said, okay, forget this. Let's see how much these guys are willing to give and how serious this is. So once we started pushing for more and more, who came over and took over was Dan. So the Caroline is your first front. Now, the person to fix the problems to make sure they go away and to threaten you, and he did. He actually threatened. Just watch the video. He not only, basically threatened me. He told me that he was going to put me into jail. I'll go to jail if I don't take the blame.
Which video? Sorry, which video are you referring to?
There's a video on the New Genesis channel. It's on YouTube. He didn't know we were recording, so obviously they also told we recorded everything. So we've got videos of every conversation.
Rami, can you please get that video from Hussein so we can tweet it after this?
Yeah,
would be great.
Just jump on YouTube. Just jump on the YouTube channel, New Genesis. You'll find all the videos there, and you'll find. I mean, even Liquid. I mean, in terms of them saying that they don't counterfeit funds, we actually got the SEO of Liquid to also say, yeah, this is how they operate. See, we befriended them to try to fix the problem because they realized we caught them. So in a way, when we approached them, they actually gave us evidence without realizing what they were saying. The same thing as what you guys did with Sam right now. So we've got even their guys in Liquid saying exactly, on the centralized exchange, we can create whatever we want, really, and you can trade it however they want. And I'll give you that video as well so you can share it as well.
Yeah, I'll do that. Just trying to find the video myself. And do you want to add more? Just a final point I want to ask you about. We could do the rest. So I just tweeted, I pinned it as well. I'll pin it in this space and I'll pin it on my profile. But the next space, for anyone that wants to set reminders, we'll do it on Tuesday or Monday. I think Monday. So you can set your reminders there. And we've got another guest coming in, and we can go through the rest of the points because you sent me a lot of evidence to saying you and Nick, who we couldn't bring up on stage. And did you want to touch on the again? I don't know if you want to mention other names, but you did mention to me 2 other names, and then the exchanges.
Let me just say this is speculative, and this is from insiders who've come to us. This is from what we've been able to piece together. They're obviously trying to create a much bigger platform. FTX is just one pawn in this whole thing. So they were trying to connect multiple and this is again speculation, and just take this, whatever I can prove, I'll tell you straight out, it's provable. Whatever we can say the technology says that's what they're trying to do, I'll say, and whatever's given us from insiders, as it will say. So we believe they were trying to connect multiple amount of exchanges together, and they were trying to create a secondary engine, which is a layer 2, obviously, protocol sitting on top of those exchanges to actually trade on those systems without having to ever go to the blockchain. And again, I know it's theory, I know it's speculative, and that's why I'm saying it very clear. But we also believe that there's a couple of parties involved, and basically everyone that came to us said the same names. So there's Kevin and there's Justin. So you've got those two guys.
Just to be clear, I want to elaborate because you did tell me those names before. The names you're referring to are Kevin O'Leary and Justin Sun?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, again, I want to make it very clear that this is not,
speculative. There's no evidence yet. This is speculative based on the discussions you've had, the insider you've spoken to, and a few dots you've connected.
Correct.
But no proof to say this is 100% true, correct?
Correct. I mean, it makes sense when you start looking at the overall who came into that $4 billion bailout, why would they come in, why was Kevin trying to bail out Sam? I mean, the stuff that we got given and the intel and the actions that were taken after do marry up very well, but it is all speculative. So let's not take it as proof. Let's not take it as being reality. Let's just take it as something we were given. We are investigating it very heavily. And I mean, right now, the picture doesn't look too bright for him. It does look like there is some kind of connection between them. But what it is, we have no idea.
Mm.
All right. So I want to say to the audience two things. Number one, we'll continue the discussion a bit later. I'll do a summary. I'll send it through via email. If you want the summary that the team will do, just go on my profile at the top. There's the email section. You can subscribe there, and we do summaries of the spaces. See if you missed anything. And then the next space will be on Monday. I do want to say, like, if you go back to the space, and I've got a few people DMing me different segments, and a few of the reporters as well DMing, asking us about a few segments, and they're waiting for the space to end so they have the recording so they can go back and listen and get those and write their piece. So what I'm going to do is I won't continue the space. I will end it now. Again, if you want to continue the discussion, we'll do it on Monday. Pin tweet, you can set your reminders there. But I will end this one. So the recording is available, and reporters and anyone that's writing.
Okay, so I'm going to start this now and upload it to my channel.
Segments. As Hussein mentioned, and